So with the KC Cup finally over and December's upcoming updates now behind us, we can now start to talk about the ban list, and we think, based on last year, we're going to get something within the first week of December, around December 4th or 5th, and it's going to be very interesting because I don't think many people right now can argue that we aren't in a fairly balanced metagame right now. Of the top tier decks, they're all very balanced. They keep going up and down, apart from crystrons that kind of seem to stay at tier 1, but that's really only in Duel Links meta competitive tournaments. You really see crystrons. It's on the ladder, it's kind of not there due to the cost and the amount of boxing to go into actually, get the deck. They're all pretty viable, they're all pretty balanced, however, it is just a stale meta for the last 6 to 12 months, depending on what decks you're kind of thinking of, and something does need to change in that regard. So, I'm going to talk for 15 minutes about what I think should happen on the ban list. The most of it's going to be wrong, probably, but let me know down below what you think of the ban list and what you want to see changed, and if you're playing the game for fun, you want to have fun on the ladder, then some of these changes will definitely be for you. If you're a competitive player, then you might have a completely different mindset for what he's changing. So let's dive right in using Duel Links meta's tier list as a base of the different decks we'll talk about. But let's dive into tier 1 with crystrons. Now, crystrons are a deck I don't really know too much about. Obviously you do because you've played against them, but I've never played them, again, because of how expensive they are, and I'm sure Konami will find some way to hit the deck. They keep liking to, every ban list, every 2 ban lists, to give them a little flick on the wrist and see if that does anything. I think right now they're using Sea Stealth Attack, which maybe that would be an option to go back and hit that card, because no one's really playing it, outside of maybe a few water-based decks from the Shark, Shark box, but maybe that'd be an idea to go back and hit that in some way, rather than the crystron core, because I think there probably is something they can do to the core of the deck to kind of hit it, but given it's so spread out, and given that it probably doesn't see anywhere close to the play it does in DLM tournaments, I think they'll see, you know what, it's okay, we'll keep it as it is, and let people run into it as they do, because it is a very skill-intensive deck to play, and I think that it's a fun deck to come up against on the ladder, because it does, it does promote having to actually play around what your opponent's doing. So I think crystrons will be hit. How? I have no idea. Now we have Karakuri. I think this one is one where everyone kind of agrees on what the issue is, and it's a restart plus the level 2, I think it is, the Inashichi, which if you don't open this card, you restart into it, you then have your immediate combo for your 2 big synchros and an extra card on the field. And that's just monsters, not even included back row, which is insane. Now, to me, it kind of reminds me of what might happen is with Dark Magician, where Konami initially limited Magician of Dark Illusion to 2, I think it was, and kept Rod at 3, and then after a balance or so, they went, actually, we made the wrong call, let's put Rod to 3, and Dark Illusion to 2. I think they'll do that the same here. They'll put Inasichi to 3, and then put Ninashi to 2, and then you will have a bit more of a balanced deck that makes the restart combo less likely to open that card, which then makes it seem a bit more fair. And of course, crystrons, Karakuri, if they don't draw that combo, they might just scoop. But also, if you're playing against Karakuris, if you see them summon out that card, you scoop, because there's no way you're winning that duel. So it's a very unfun deck to play against, but only because a lot of the times, once they have that board set up, it's incredibly hard to break. I still enjoy the deck on ladder when I play against it, but I think that is the easiest hit they could do, and the one that would do the biggest amount of change, but won't kill the deck. It will just make sure the deck has to play a different way, and they won't hit restart because they've already done that already, and it would be unfair to hit the deck or to hit restart based off just Karakuri being a bit of a bitch. So tier 2, and this is the one where I think people are have the most issues with. First of all, Invoked Magician Girls. Alistair got hit to 3 on the last list, which was very much needed, but thankfully now, of course, the degenerate Invoked Element Sabers is dead. That's great, that was ridiculous, but of course, Magician Girls are now the next deck to pick up the mantra of being Invoked's plaything, and it's been over a year since, Magician Girls and Invoked have released, and I think they do need one more hit, and the biggest problem isn't Alistair, it's Purgatrio. I think everyone can kind of agree that Purgatrio is the one card that they summon that and you're like, well shit, I'm dead, because it can attack everything, does piercing damage, and they will likely summon 2. Because why the hell wouldn't you? And it's just a very oppressive card. Now, Konami might see that people aren't playing this deck as much as, as much as we think they do, in the KC Cup, because they do take data from that, and so they might not hit it, They might leave it as it is for another ban list and see what happens, which I'd kind of be fine with. It's not the biggest issue in the world to deal with, but they might do something stupid, like putting Berry Magician Girl, the Earth one, to 2, at which point you then have to be forced to say, do you want to run 2 berries, or do you want to run 2 Magilanicas, or do you just not play the Magician Girl engine because you can't now access that card if you need it? It's a tough one, but if it was me, I personally would put Invoked Purgatrio to 3, so it joins the same spot as Alistair, meaning you have to run 2 Alistairs, 1 Purgatrio, or 1 Purgatrio, 2 Alistairs, which would make the deck feel a lot less oppressive, because once you've dealt with that Purgatrio, they then have to find a way to bring it back, rather than just shit out another one, which I think is the most unfun thing about that deck. Then we have everyone's favourite deck at the moment, Shiranui. It's now coming up to 1 year of them being around in December, like December 11th I think it was, they came to Duel Links, and every PvP event since then has been a Shiranui Cup, whether it's the KC Cup, the Turbo Duel GP, the Duel Carnival, it has been a Shiranui simulator, and that is incredibly unfun. And there have been, hit before. We had Spectral Sword put to 3, which did do some stuff for the deck, but not really enough. So I think the easiest thing to do is to shove Spectral Sword to 2, and to put another card to 2, like Sun Saga, Blackwings have a Synchro at 2, but, Shiranuis can't have their best Synchro at 2. And if things stay the same, then Squire would be forced out of the deck, because she, of course, is on the limit 2 as well. Now, do they put her to limit 3 or her to limit 1? I don't know. However, a lot more needs to be done to Shiranuis because they have a fucking control variant that isn't control at all, it's just back row. There's nothing really control about the Shiranui portion of the deck or any of the other monsters in the deck. All it does is summon your big boy, set your 3 back row, and that's apparently controlling the duel. I could do the same with Gladiator Beast fucking Andal and some beatdown with Triple Fiendish and Floodgates and Ballistas and call it a control Gladiator Beast deck, and would that be fine? Sure. So, I think the bigger thing, well not the bigger thing, but the thing that needs to happen as well, is unfortunately, level dupe and augmentation, they need to be hit. Which is why of course the keys is probably in the thumbnail, because clickbait and because of this, and Shivers promote the worst of that skill, so even something as simple as a life point damage to trigger it would be a big game, because they can't turn 1 immediately. Reveal card in the hand, summon Sun Saga, and then have a big boy that can protect itself by banishing everything in your graveyard, trigger everything. Yeah, I think they'll do something with it. Now, it does suck because those skills do also promote, Xyz summoning. But right now, we're not seeing any Xyz decks really use them, and I think the reason for that is because Shiranui's is just a much better use case of them. We're seeing things like Territory of the Sharks be really, really good for Xyzs because that is a very, very good skill, but it's limited to waters, which is a lot nicer than saying, hey, you can just duplicate any level you want in any deck and make some broken-ass cards. Maybe they put a restriction on the level of monsters you can summon, but then it kind of goes against the whole mechanic of, duplicating level for synchro summoning, which is what it's intended for. So I don't really know what they would do with, I think the biggest thing is just the life point decrease. If you take 1500 points of damage, you can then activate the skill, once per dual skill, that kind of thing. So I think that's the most likely hit of this entire ban list discussion prediction thing. I think dupe and augmentation getting hit is the biggest kind of change, and the one that I think that is going to happen the most. And of course they'll hit other skills as well, but I'm not going to go through every stupid character specific skill that sucks and see if any of them can actually be made better. I would kind of like to see 3-star demotion come back in some way, if they were able to bring that back and find a way to not make it busted. It might not be now, but that'd be kind of fun. A very classic nostalgia skill coming back in some form would be nice. Now, let's move on to the other decks, because DLM has no tier 3 anymore. Most of them being KC Cup decks, which have now been removed because they've gone back to their side deck format, which was indefinitely removed for 3 weeks. Very indefinitely. Yeah, but we know Konami likes using KC Cup data for their ban lists, and they do one after every single KC Cup. And in the KC Cup, especially Stage 2, you're heavily favouring OTK decks. Decks that can get fast wins like Blackwings, Dragoonities, and Heroes. And since we don't have any official rankings just yet, we don't know how each deck did in terms of damage in the event. So the most likely here, I think, is Black Wings again, because it's also now been 1 year since Moon, Gale, and Zephyros came to the game, so I could see them doing one more round of hits, but they're all ultra rare, so how do you kind of balance that and balance what ones to hit when you've already got 3 limit 2s already? Do you shove some of them to limit 3 and make them fight over whether they play, you know, triple Simoon and no Gale? Or do you put Zephyros to 3 and Gale to 3 so they're still running the same limits, but it kind of has a weird mentality for the player where they think they can run things but they can't? Like, I don't know what you do with Black Wings, but they could also go down the route of saying, you know what, OTK decks aren't fun, and they could go and give Dragoontes another hit, or Heroes another hit, or they'll go and ban Hetrunade for no reason, because it's only really seeing play in those decks, and it's where that card, it's that card's deserved place in OTK decks, so I don't want to see it be hit, but it feels like Konami will do something like that, even though it's something that I haven't seen on a ladder for years now. Like, literally, I don't remember the last time I've seen a Hetrunade in Duel Links PvP. You know what else is unfun? Superheavy Samurai Giga Gloves. Yeah, it's the same kind of deal as Crimson Fox, but Crimson Fox of course was used with Neos Fusion and abused that way because sent to the graveyard, make it 0, attacking with your Brave Neos can a lot of the times cause an OTK, but it's kind of an unfun card in that you'll get it, your opponent will get it in the graveyard very, very easily, and a lot of the times they will have 2 or 3 copies in the graveyard, which means that if you're in a position to OTK, after you've done the whole get around your opponent's big defense Superheavy Samurai, which isn't the, you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, considering they have things in the graveyard that can banish to negate when they're targeted. So, after doing all of that, you then have to compete with potentially up to 3, you know, direct attack, make your monster 0 effects. That's kind of rough. So I think we'll put, you know, we'll put this Giga Gloves to 2. It will, you know, the deck will lose a little bit of functionality, but it will stay the same regardless. Doesn't run any spells anyway, so it's fine in that regard. But it will make that deck a bit more fairer, a bit more fun, and I think that's a fair enough hit if Super Heavy Samurais do indeed get hit at all. And rounding off the controversial ones, I guess, is one staple needing to go. Now, I don't think it really does. I think the only one out of the top 4, which is Cosmic, Floodgate, Karma Cut, and Fiendish, that can go is Floodgate. Now, the reason is because this does heavily promote against Xyzes. You know, if you're going to summon a monster, you flip down their material, you can't summon, which is a great form of disruption for that deck. Whereas if you were to flip down the Xyz monster, that's the bigger pain in the ass because you've invested 2 or 3 monsters into this one monster, all your resources are now gone, and I can't personally see them on this specific list hitting Floodgate, because they only just gave us the Floodgate deal back in August, so what, 4 months of the deal? I don't think that's enough for them to do it, but if they do, an easy limit 2 or limit 3, like, so you can't use it with Cosmic, might make sense, but it means you can still play 3 if you want to. I guess that would be okay, I don't know. That's the one on this list I'm really not feeling, is a staple being hit. If they do, that'll be great. If they don't, it's whatever, we're still playing the same staples, and really, I think Konami might just give us some decent back row removal rather than banning anything. So MST coming soon maybe? That'd be kind of cool, Konami, please, that'd be fun. And finally, for things need to come off the list completely or in some way, first of all, for highs need to return. Konami have been releasing more and more of those attack lock cards like Marauding Captain, the Magician's Valkyria from the new event, and so I think Dyna can come back, but only at a limit 2, which means that Donpa, I think it's Donpa, that's currently limit 2, needs to go to limit 3 or to unlimited, which would be a fair trade, I think. I think bringing them back is fine for the current metagame. They are still missing Rafale, which would help the deck greatly, but I would like to see them return. And given that the current metagame has a lot of decks that heavily rely on being banished, like Thunder Dragons, like Shiranuis, bringing out a Dyna isn't necessarily going to be a hard plus for your deck anymore. It's not like we were back in 2018 when these cards came out. So I think they might be fine to bring back now. Similarly, Rose Lover. Sylvans aren't seeing play, there isn't really any other plant-based decks apart from Aromages, which I guess could bring out a Bergamot and have it be, you know, decently statted and whatnot, but it's anti-trap hate. It would come across as Konami saying, you know what, we see you don't like the back row heavy meta, you know, here's something to deal with it with a rogue deck, which might be enough to kind of, you know, appease some players, sure, but I feel like rogues can come back. If you want to pick to limit 3 and you want to make sure people can't use Cosmic with it, fine, do that, but it could probably come back to Unlimited and be exactly the same and just be fine. And finally, my pipe dream is Magician's Rod coming back to 3 because I like that deck and I really want to play it again. I mean, I still play it, you know, still my main deck, but I would like to see Dark Magician be good, but I think the more likely thing is because DM remains in the top 50 most played cards in Ranked because it is a fun nostalgia anime deck that's actually pretty decent, but, you know, rogue tier, which they'll likely give us one of the rank 7 Dark Magician Xyz monsters for an alternate strategy, either things like special summoning from the deck or activating spell traps from the hand, and that would be a fun way to go about it rather than saying, you know what, here's the card that starts your plays, here's your searcher, have it at 3, it's fine, have it be so Dark Magician has to work for a bigger boss monster via navigation, and then go from there. So that's my really bad balance predictions. I'm sure they're going to be 99% wrong, apart from level augmentation duplication. I think that one is a pretty safe bet, to be fair. But let me know down below what you think of the ban list coming up, what you want to see changed and hit, and if I'm completely wrong or if I'm right, if you agree with me, if you don't agree with me, let me know down below. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next Donks video. See you then.